Welcome to another episode of this, the Caregiver and Spoonie blog, where I literally talk about my life. And the reason why I do it is because I know what it's like to go through a lot of things and feel alone or not knowing what to do. So that's why I'm talking about it, and I actually enjoy this. I feel like this is my own therapy. Again, like I feel pretty good after I'm done doing an episode. I feel pretty good about it. So I just want to give you that information. And real quick before we start, as you know, my name is Jordan Banderas, and a quick reminder: don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any episodes. So let's get this started. So I already talked about until where I moved to the States. Now, okay, so I'm here in the States. I'm trying to learn the language. I'm trying to prepare myself for school. Like we moved here in July 7th of 2000. So we moved with my uncle, and if you remember on the previous episode, my aunt told my mom literally a few months or a year before we moved that she didn't want us here. So when I moved to the States, I never felt welcome. I never felt welcome. I felt like, I don't know, like an intruder, and it's kind of hard to describe because it's like, even though they're my family, I felt like I didn't belong, you know? So I started school in a completely different country. And I didn't know anybody at the school that I started, so I started making friends. And here's the thing though, here in the States, in the United States, the schools are way different than in Mexico. Like I mentioned before, in Mexico they have a fence, you're not able to get out unless the school is over or somebody has to pick you up before school ends, you know? But in here, there's no fence. There's no fence. You just go to the gate and in freedom. So I really didn't enjoy school because for me it was kind of hard to understand it. Even though I was learning the language, the thing is that, and I realized this with talking about this and working on all of my trauma, that one of the reasons why I felt like I didn't like school or that I wasn't too good is because of the way that I was that my family made me believe, or that my family made me feel about myself. Like they always made me feel like I wasn't good enough, I wasn't gonna learn, I wasn't gonna be something. So in the back of my mind, I'm like, why am I even going to school? You know, according to them, I'm not gonna be good enough. Like, remember, my uncle told me at 6 years old that he was going to take me to Disneyland if I did good. And even though I did good, then he changed the rules and said, like, oh, you didn't get an A+, even though I got an A-. So that right there made me feel like I wasn't going to be good enough. So I moved to the States. I'm going to school. I feel like I'm never going to be good enough. My uncle is putting pressure on me to do good in school, like it was easy. Which is not, because I'm like, okay, I had to learn a new language, which it was kind of hard. and then I have to adapt to the new school system and everything. And it wasn't easy for me because once I started making friends that will speak Spanish, then it was all over for them and for me because they were like, oh, let's go here. Let's not go to class. And I was like, okay. Like I didn't even hesitate. So obviously that created a lot of problems. I was laughing school, and kids, I don't recommend this. I don't recommend it. And so I was skipping school. I wasn't going to classes, and this is on the 8th grade. So I wasn't going to classes. I was doing things that I wasn't supposed to, like just I was having somebody pick me up from school, not a friend, somebody that we would know, like they will pick us up and then we will go somewhere. And honestly, that's how I discovered the whole city. Like by not going to classes, that's how I was able to learn how the streets, how pretty much all the addresses here in Salt Lake. Like, my mom will ask me for an address. She will be like, "Oh, I don't know how to get to this address," and I will tell her like how to get there, and they're like, "How do you know?" I'm like, "Oh, I just know." You know. So anyway, so that was creating a lot of issues with my uncle. Like, at one point, I remember this, like, he was so mad because I was getting F's, and I didn't really care. So he gets all mad. He starts yelling at me. He's like, "I'm gonna send you back to Mexico." And I was like, "Go ahead, send me back, send me back." And yes, I started crying because I didn't know how to articulate it. And like I have mentioned before, in Mexico we have this thing that you don't talk back to your elders, and even here in the States they do that, or any other culture that I've seen. Usually you don't talk back to your elders, but at the same time we hold all that inside of us. So I'm crying. I was angry, actually. I was angry. I wanted to find my uncle, and this was when I was like 13, 14. So he gets all mad. He's like, "I'm gonna send him back to Mexico." I'm like, "Go ahead, send me. I don't care." Like, I didn't really care. And then I didn't really care about school, so I kept acting up. And again, nobody asked me why I was acting up, like if there was anything going on inside of me. So I was like, nobody cares about me, so I'm just gonna do my own thing. And what happened, this was in April of 2001, so I was 14 years old. Because I was doing so bad, my uncle decided to kick us out. So he kicked us out of his house. My mom, they pretty much blame it on me. At a 14-year-old, he's all like, "Oh, he's a bad example to my son," and all of this. And I'm like, okay. But I'm pretty sure that it was because of my aunt. Remember, she didn't want us here. So I also believe that my aunt had something to do with it. So they kicked us out. My mom is blaming it on me. We ended up living in the basement. My mom is upset at me, and I'm like, I still didn't care. I'm like, "You did your own thing in Mexico. You left me alone, so I'm not gonna listen to you because you didn't really raise me to follow your rules or to see you as my mom." You know, like, I would say, like, I see her as my mom, but not that, like, I don't. At that point, I didn't have any respect towards her or my uncle or anybody, because it's like, that's not the way that I was raised. That's what I was told to do, but that's not the way that I was raised. So I changed. And so I just kept acting up in 8th grade, 9th grade. And I remember that there was one time where I was playing soccer, and I think I have mentioned this before, but we were playing indoor soccer, and I went with my uncle. He took me, and then he started talking to me. He tried to give me the talk. And I think he really messed up. Because he's all like, "Oh, you know, you need to do better in school," and all of this. Is like, "All of my friends told me to not bring you here because you were going to be a changed person. You were not the same kid that I left in Mexico when I moved." And I'm like, and then he said this, and I remember. He might deny it, but I remember. He said, like, and I think I should have listened to them instead of, like, telling them, "No, I know he's gonna do good." But I'm like, now I'm like, dude, my mom was never there at my at the house, at the apartment. You were not there. Like, I don't have anybody to say, like, okay, here's my this person is the person that I can trust, or this person is the person that if he tells me something, I know where he's coming from. Like, nobody talked to me like with love. That's the thing. It was more like, you have to do this or you're gonna suffer the consequences, you know? Instead of like, hey, what's going on? So it was always like, you have to do this, you have to. And the problem with teenagers, at this point I'm 14, with teenagers is that you can't really tell them that. I know for a fact, because every time they will say like, "Oh, you have to do this," I'm like, no, I'm not. I don't have to. I'm going to do whatever the heck I want. That was just me. And I know a lot of kids do that right now. That's why I always say, like, talk to your kids. please, because then they're gonna end up like me, getting in trouble, joining again. I didn't join again. I could have, but it wasn't like for me. And the reason why it wasn't for me is because I was like, if I join again, I will go all in, and that's not what I want. And I will talk more about that in another episode. But anyway, so I kept acting up. I get to the 10th grade, and I did good enough to get my driver's license. And then after that, it was all over. Like, all over. I was able to drive, so I got I was driving my friends' cars. I got kicked out of high school. Oh, but before I move on the 9th grade, I moved from the school where I was going on the 8th grade to a different school where my uncle had his friends' kids enrolled, I guess. So I was going there, and because I was kind of like the outsider, they didn't really know me, they started picking on me. And because at this point, throughout my entire life, I'm on fight or flight mode, I'm fighting back. So I'm fighting back. I didn't care. I'm fighting back. So I fight one of them. I fight one of them, and here's one thing that happened. So they were picking on me. I got mad, and I took one of their books from school. So I was like, you want it? Come get it. I took one of the books. I went home. He came over with a bunch of friends who they were my friends too, but they took they took his side, okay? So they came over, they lied to me in order for me to get out of the house. They're like, oh, let's go play soccer. So I'm like, okay, let's go. And then we walk into the park, and I see everybody, and they're like, oh, you're gonna fight him. And I'm like, okay, let's go. But then they're like, no, you're actually gonna fight all of us. They wanted to jump me. And I was like, all right. I was like, at one point I got scared. I'm like, you know what? Whatever happens, happens. And I see somebody, and I was like, I'm going to see if he can help me. I'm like, okay, that's my friend, blah, 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 blah. I kind of like, I was trying to get out of the issue, so I went to talk to the guy, and I'm like, hey, I need help. These fools are trying to jump me, and he's like, well, I guess I can help, and whatever. So he came over, he's like, he's my friend. So me and the other guy, the other kid got in a fight. I beat him up. And then they left. I beat him up. Everybody left. And then what happened in this situation is that I'm laying in bed. My uncle calls me all upset. When I answer, he's all like, why did you fight him? Or blah, 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 blah. Why did you do all of this? And I'm like, okay. It looks like one side of the story. Is like, did they tell you like what exactly they did? How they were picking on me? How they were trying to jump me like 12 against 1 and all of this? And he's like, no. I'm like, okay, then why are you yelling at me? He's like, okay, well, I'm gonna talk to their parents. Like trying to solve everything with civility or whatever. So at that point, I'm upset because I'm like, oh, this fool took their side. Like he didn't ask me like exactly what happened. He just started yelling at me. So I'm mad. I'm on fight or flight mode. And at that point, I'm on fight mode. I'm like, okay, I'm ready. You wanted to? Let's go. So I'm all like, I was upset because he's like, okay, he doesn't even listen to me. So I'm like, screw him. So and then he's all like, oh, they never told me exactly what happened, so they just told me their side. And I'm like, yeah, and you didn't listen to my side. And he was, oh, well, okay, you told me what happened, So that's what happened. Then I moved to the 10th grade, met new people, keep skipping school, got my driver's license, and this happened. I got kicked out of school on the 11th grade. I got in fights. I got suspended. I got in fights. I got suspended. I got kicked out on the 11th grade. I moved to a different high school where I was like, okay, I'm gonna do better. I'm like, I'm gonna try, which is all I could do, But I just couldn't. So I started making new friends. I got in trouble again. Now I was driving. My uncle decides to give me a car. He said, I will buy you a car. And I will talk about that later because he buys me the car. He gives me the money. He's like, that's your gift. and and um, and I'm like, okay, that's my gift. So he buys me the car, which I think it was nice, and I appreciate it. But and I will talk this a little bit more about that later. But just so you know, what happens that years later he asked me to pay him back, and I was like, "You say it was my gift," and I did pay him back. And then we'll talk more about that. But like I said, I was going to school. I really wasn't going to school. So on the 12th grade, I got kicked out of regular school, and then they put me on night school. So I went into night school. At that point, I was working, and I needed like 2 credits or something like that. So I was going to night school, and I started working, and they're like, okay, if we have this thing saying that you work, like something that says that you work, but we'll give you the credits that you need. So I did. I got that. I didn't get the GED. I got my diploma. Because my uncle was always like, oh, you have to get your diploma. If you get your GED, that's bad. Like, it's not the same as a diploma. So I got my diploma. And pay attention to what I'm saying, because I'm going to mention that again in another episode. So he said the GED is pretty much bad. Like, the GED is bad. The diploma is good. So pay attention to that. I'm going to mention more about that in another episode, because I'm going to bring it back. So I got my diploma. I kept working. I kept just doing my own thing. And that was pretty much me on high school. and throughout school. Like, I didn't really care. I got enrolled into a college, but I only went there for 1 day, and I was like, this isn't for me. Like, this isn't for me. And he was all upset. He's like, oh, you should still go to school. It's gonna help you. But here's the thing, though. And this is one of the things that happens a lot. And I'm just saying, I'm not saying it to judge, but take it from this perspective. My uncle said always, you have to go to school, 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 you have to go to the university, you have to all do all this, you have to get a degree, you have to get a degree. Okay, this is the same person that didn't even go to high school. This is the same person that is expecting for him to get everything handed to him. So you can tell somebody, hey, you have to go to high school or you have to go to school, but if you didn't finish high school, or if you didn't finish, or you didn't go to school like the same way that you're pressuring your kid or you're pressuring somebody to go, how are we supposed to follow that example? You know? So how was I supposed to follow this example where the person that's telling me to go to school never really went to school? He's telling me, oh, you have to go to school and get a degree, but he didn't have a degree. Like, and I understand why he was saying it, but it's like, I need an example. I need somebody to say, like, if he can do it, I can do it. Because my uncle, if you remember, and I have said this before, my uncle is the same person that said to me that I wasn't going to be as smart as him. That his brain was a Pentium 4 processor, and mine was like the cheapest AMD, you know? And that's like the lowest processor there was back in the day, because now AMD is good. I have heard good things about it. So in my mind, I'm feeling like, how do you want me to go to school if you have said, or if I'm not smarter than you? Like, you want me to go to school and I know I'm gonna fail because I'm not smarter than you. That's how I felt. So that's pretty much what I wanted to bring attention to in this episode, because it's like, my uncle inadvertently said that to me. Probably he said jokingly or anything like that, but the way that I took it, it was like, okay, I'm not smarter than you, so why do you want me to go to school? And if you said something like that to your kid or to somebody you know, they might have taken it the wrong way, kind of like I did. Because if they see you as an authority figure, then it's like, okay, that person knows me. That person knows that I can't or can do it. So if this person is telling me that I can't be smarter than him or her, then why bother, you know? So that's pretty much what I wanted to bring on this episode. And I'm gonna keep saying this: always talk to your kid. Don't, if you say something like what my uncle used to say, like he was smarter than me, just let them know. Like, the way that I would say it to my kid, and like I said, I don't have kids, but me and my wife might have to adopt, or we're gonna have to adopt or do foster care. The way that I would put it, now that I'm researching psychology and all of this, I would say it like this: it's like, right now, you're growing and you're learning, and whatever you decide to go to school for, I know that you can do it. If you need help, we can find you the help. Now you have online, you have Google, you can find anything on Google, literally. So it's like that. It's like, don't make them feel bad. That's the freaking thing. Like that's what happened to me. Like all of my years of school, I felt bad because somebody made me feel bad. So I was like, I always felt like I had something to prove, but for my uncle, it wasn't never good enough. I could have gotten an A plus, and he would have been like, "You didn't get more." I could have gotten I remember getting a 3.0, like when I got my driver's license, when I did good in school. I remember getting like a 2.9 GPA, which is good. But he was like, "Oh, you couldn't do better." So I was like, I got my driver's license. So after that, like I said, I didn't really go to school. And kids, I don't recommend it. I do recommend you to stay in school, because depending on what you want to do in life, you might need school. There are things that you don't need school for. Now you can get online courses or anything like that. And you might hear this from entrepreneurs like Gary Vee or something like that. Like, the school system is broken, which it is. And I'm gonna explain that as to why in another episode in the podcast. I think that will be better instead of my blog in the situation. But that's what I wanted to talk about in this episode. I hope you're enjoying the episodes. I hope you're understanding why it's important to talk about how we feel. If you ever felt like that in high school or going to school, you're not alone. You're not alone. That's why there's a lot of mental health issues like depression and anxiety, because kids feel like they're not good enough, or somebody said something to them. So that's why I'm talking about this, so you guys understand that you're not alone. You can get through whatever feelings you feel right now inside of you. If somebody made you feel that way, you can get through it. But obviously, it's not easy. I'm never gonna say that it's easy. So it's not easy, but it can be done. So that was today's episode. If you want to share your story anonymously, like I have mentioned before, you can send me an email at thecaregiverandspoony@gmail.com. Don't forget to share, like, and subscribe. If you know somebody that it's going through something, you can share this podcast or the blog with them. They might be able to relate to this. That way they can understand that they're not alone, that their feelings are not invalidated. And don't forget to subscribe, like I mentioned. Share, like, and subscribe. Follow us on Facebook. Follow us on YouTube. Follow us anywhere, pretty much. So, I'll leave you with this. Always take care of yourself. Have a great day.